There's a moment that happens in complete silence. No music. No dramatic revelation. Just a thought. A single, calculated thought that crosses someone's mind before they decide to destroy you. And the terrifying part? You won't see it coming. You won't hear it. But by the end of this journey together, you'll recognize it. You'll feel it before it happens. Because the human mind, when it decides to harm, follows a pattern. A sequence. 31 specific cognitive steps that occur in the shadows of conscious thought, building like pressure behind a dam until the moment of action. I've spent 15 years studying the intersection of criminal psychology and behavioral analysis, working with forensic psychologists, reviewing thousands of interview transcripts, sitting across from people who've done unspeakable things, and here's what nobody tells you. The difference between a good person and a predator isn't as vast as you think. It's a series of thoughts. A progression. And understanding that progression is the only thing standing between you and becoming someone's target. Right now, as you listen to these words, someone somewhere is moving through these 31 thoughts. They're looking at another human being and systematically dismantling their empathy, their hesitation, their humanity. Not with violence yet. With thoughts. Precise, methodical thoughts that will give them permission to act. And if you don't understand how this works, you're vulnerable. So let's begin where every predatory act begins. In the quiet. In the observation. The first thought is almost innocent. It's curiosity. Pure, simple observation. They notice you. Not in the way a stranger glances at someone in a coffee shop. This is different. This is the moment a hunter sees movement in the brush. You've done something, said something, revealed something that marks you as interesting. Maybe you laughed too freely. Maybe you seemed too trusting. Maybe you looked away first. Whatever it was, you registered. You became visible in a way that most people don't. And here's what makes this so dangerous. You have no idea it's happening. To you, it's just another moment. To them, it's data. The predatory mind is always collecting data. The second thought is assessment. They're measuring you now. Not your height or weight or physical strength, though that might factor in later. They're measuring something far more important, your psychological defenses. How aware are you? Do you notice when you're being watched? Do you trust easily? Are you polite to the point of sacrificing your own comfort? This is where they're looking for what psychologists call exploitable traits. And we all have them. Every single one of us has patterns in our behavior that can be mapped, predicted, exploited. The question is, are yours visible to someone who's looking? Here's a story. A woman named Sarah worked at a corporate office in Seattle. Bright, capable woman. A new manager joined her team, and within the first week, he did something subtle. During a meeting, he asked everyone to share a personal challenge they were facing. Standard team-building exercise. Sarah mentioned she was struggling with her confidence after a recent project hadn't gone well. Everyone nodded sympathetically. The meeting moved on. But the manager filed that information away. Sarah had just revealed her exploitable trait. She needed external validation. She doubted herself. And for the next 8 months, that manager used that single piece of information to systematically control her work life, her decisions, her self-worth. It started with thoughts. His thoughts about her vulnerability. The third thought is about opportunity. This is where the predatory mind shifts from passive observation to active planning. They're asking themselves, is this person accessible? Can I create situations where I'm alone with them, physically or psychologically? Do they have strong support systems, or are they isolated? This is why predators often target people who are new to an area, going through transitions, or disconnected from family and friends. It's not that these people are weaker. It's that they're more accessible. The predator is thinking about proximity, about creating chances to operate without interference. The fourth thought is justification. And this is where it gets darker. Because up until now, these could almost be normal thoughts. People observe each other. People assess social dynamics. But here's where the predatory mind does something different. It starts building a narrative. A story that explains why what they're about to do is somehow acceptable. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe you were asking for it. Maybe you're not really a victim because you smiled at them once, or you didn't explicitly say no, or you were vulnerable in a way that made you easy prey. This justification isn't loud. It's not a dramatic internal monologue. It's quiet, insidious. A small voice that says, "This is okay." And once that voice is established, the rest becomes easier. Let me tell you what forensic psychologists have discovered about this justification phase. When they interview convicted criminals, especially those who've committed premeditated acts, there's always a moment they describe where they gave themselves permission. Sometimes it sounds like, "I knew she wouldn't really mind." Sometimes it's, "He had it coming." Sometimes it's even more abstract, "I needed to know what it would feel like." The justification doesn't have to make logical sense. It just has to be enough to quiet the part of the brain that says stop. And the human brain is frighteningly good at creating these justifications when it wants something badly enough. The fifth thought is about testing. They're going to test your boundaries now. Small tests. Microscopically small. They'll stand a little too close and see if you step back. They'll make a comment that's slightly inappropriate and watch how you react. They'll ask you for a small favor that makes you uncomfortable and observe whether you say yes to keep the peace. Every single one of these tests is data collection. They're mapping your boundaries like a cartographer maps terrain. Were you soft? Were you firm? Where can they push without you pushing back? And here's the insidious part. If you fail one test, if you don't enforce a boundary, they don't stop. They escalate. Because now they know. You're someone who prioritizes harmony over self-protection. You're someone who can be moved. The 6th through 10th thoughts are all variations of the same pattern, escalation planning. This is where the predatory mind starts to think in sequences. If I do this, they'll do that. If they react this way, I'll respond with that. They're running simulations in their head, playing out scenarios, anticipating your moves like a chess player thinks 3 steps ahead. And the terrifying part is how good they get at this. Manipulation isn't a talent people are born with. It's a skill they practice. And the more they practice, the more invisible their moves become. There's a technique in interrogation psychology called setting the stage. Before a skilled interrogator asks the question they really want answered, they'll spend hours creating an environment where the answer they want is the path of least resistance. They'll make you comfortable. They'll build rapport. They'll make you feel like telling them what they want to know is actually your idea. Predators do the same thing in everyday life. They're setting stages constantly, creating scenarios where the outcome they want feels inevitable, natural, like it was always going to happen this way. And if you don't recognize the stage being set, you'll walk right into your position. The 11th thought is about isolation. This is critical. This is where predators separate their targets from support systems, from outside perspectives, from anyone who might interrupt the process. And isolation doesn't always mean physical separation. Sometimes it's psychological. They'll subtly suggest that your friends don't really understand you, that your family is too judgmental, that you can only really be yourself with them. This creates dependency. It creates a closed loop where you're only hearing one voice, one perspective, one version of reality. And slowly, imperceptibly, that voice becomes your internal voice. You start to think their thoughts, doubt your own perceptions, question your own memory of events. This is called gaslighting, and it starts with a thought. I need them to doubt themselves more than they trust themselves. Here's what this looks like in real time. A man named David started dating someone who seemed perfect at first. Charming, attentive, interested in everything about him. But within 3 months, something shifted. She started making small comments about his friends. They seem kind of superficial, don't you think? I noticed they didn't really listen when you were talking about your promotion. Nothing aggressive. Just observations. Gentle suggestions. And David, wanting to be understanding, started seeing his friends through her lens. Within 6 months, he'd stopped seeing them regularly. Within a year, he couldn't remember the last time he'd had a conversation with anyone outside of her influence. He wasn't locked in a room. He was psychologically isolated. And it started with her thoughts about separating him from outside perspectives. The 12th through 15th thoughts are about establishing control mechanisms. These are the psychological tools predators use to keep you compliant once they've got you isolated. Fear is one. They might not threaten you overtly, but they'll create an atmosphere where you're always slightly afraid of disappointing them, angering them, losing them. Guilt is another. They'll make you feel responsible for their emotions, their actions, their well-being. If they're upset, it's because you did something wrong. If they lash out, it's because you pushed them to it. Shame works too. They'll identify the things you're most insecure about and press on those wounds just enough to keep them open, keep you feeling like you're not quite good enough, like you're lucky they tolerate you at all. The 16th thought is particularly insidious. It's about normalization. They're thinking about how to make their behavior seem normal. How to recalibrate your sense of what's acceptable so that things that would have horrified you 6 months ago now seem like minor issues. This happens gradually. The first time they raise their voice, you're shocked. The 10th time, you barely flinch. The first time they criticize you publicly, you're humiliated. By the 20th time, you've learned to laugh it off, make excuses for them, tell yourself it's just their sense of humor. This normalization is how people end up in situations they never thought they'd tolerate. The line doesn't move all at once. It moves incrementally, one thought at a time, one boundary violation at a time, until you're standing somewhere you don't recognize, wondering how you got there. The 17th through 21st thoughts are about maintaining the illusion. Because here's something crucial, most predators don't want you to know you're being manipulated. That would break the spell. They want you to think everything is your choice, your idea, your fault when things go wrong. So they're constantly thinking about how to maintain plausible deniability, how to frame their actions in ways that seem reasonable, even caring. I'm only saying this because I care about you. I'm just trying to help you be better. I wouldn't have to act this way if you didn't make me so worried. Every statement is crafted to keep you confused about where the responsibility actually lies. There's a phenomenon in psychology called reality distortion. It's when someone is so skilled at reframing events, at offering alternative interpretations, at questioning your memory and perception, that you genuinely start to doubt your own experience of reality. And the predatory mind is thinking about this constantly. How to distort, how to reframe, how to make you question what you know to be true. They're not doing this consciously in the sense that they're twirling a mustache and cackling about their evil plan. It's more automatic than that. It's a cognitive pattern they've developed, a way of processing the world where their needs, their desires, their version of events is always central, always correct, always justified. The 22nd thought is about contingency planning. What if you start to wake up? What if you start to see through the manipulation? They're already thinking about how to pull you back in. This is where you'll see sudden shifts in behavior. If you start to pull away, they'll become the person you first met. Charming, attentive, apologetic. They'll make promises. They'll cry. They'll tell you they can't live without you. And if that doesn't work, they'll flip to anger, to threats, to making you feel guilty for even considering leaving. The predatory mind always has a backup plan, always has another card to play. Let me tell you about a case that forensic psychologists study in training. A woman named Michelle left her husband after years of psychological abuse. She'd planned it carefully, saved money, arranged a place to stay. But within a week of leaving, he'd launched a campaign that hit every single one of her psychological vulnerabilities. First, he sent flowers and letters apologizing, saying he'd changed, saying he understood now. When that didn't work, he called her family and friends, painting himself as the victim, suggesting she was having a breakdown. When that didn't work, he started showing up at her work, not threatening, just wanting to talk. Each tactic was a thought he'd had, a strategy he'd planned. And each one was designed to exploit a different aspect of her psychology. Her desire for peace. Her fear of being seen as the bad guy. Her discomfort with conflict. He'd been thinking about how to get her back long before she'd even left. The 23rd through 27th thoughts are all about escalation to action. This is where thought becomes behavior, where planning becomes execution. And here's what makes this moment so critical. There's usually a trigger. Something that moves them from thinking about what they want to do to actually doing it. Sometimes the trigger is external. You did something they perceived as a threat, a rejection, a challenge to their control. Sometimes the trigger is internal. They've worked themselves up, built the justification so high that action feels not just acceptable but necessary, even righteous. Understanding this trigger moment is essential because this is often where you have your last chance to change the trajectory. The 28th thought is about commitment. They've decided. They're going to act. And there's a psychological phenomenon that happens in this moment. The brain releases chemicals that suppress empathy and heighten focus. It's an evolutionary mechanism designed to help humans do difficult things, overcome natural hesitation. But in a predatory context, it's what allows someone to harm another person without the normal psychological barriers kicking in. They've committed to a narrative where you're not fully human anymore. You're an obstacle, a target, a means to an end. And that thought, that dehumanization, is what makes the final actions possible. The 29th thought is about execution, the actual moment of action. And whether that action is physical violence, emotional devastation, financial exploitation, or social destruction, it's all been leading here. All 38 thoughts before this one were preparation. And here's what you need to understand. At this moment, they're not thinking about you as a person with feelings, with a life, with people who love you. They're thinking about completing their objective, about getting what they want, about proving to themselves that they can do this. Your humanity has been edited out of their mental script. The 30th thought happens during the action itself. And surprisingly, it's often a thought of justification reinforcement. They're telling themselves the same stories again, even as they're acting. This is necessary. This is deserved. This is the only way. Because even in the moment of doing harm, the human brain needs to maintain its self-image. Needs to believe it's still the protagonist of its own story. So they're narrating their actions in real time, framing them in ways that preserve their sense of self as a good person, or at least a justified person, doing what anyone would do in their situation. And the 31st thought? The 31st thought is the one that comes after. When it's done. And this thought determines whether they'll do it again. If they feel remorse, genuine recognition of the harm they've caused, there might be a chance this was a singular event, a moment they'll work to never repeat. But more often, especially with practiced predators, the 31st thought is satisfaction. Relief. Even pleasure. They got what they wanted. They proved they could do it. They feel powerful in a way that nothing else makes them feel. And that thought, that satisfaction, that's the seed that grows into the first thought of the next cycle. The curiosity, the observation, the search for the next target. So now you understand the pattern, the progression, the 31 thoughts that turn a human being into a predator. But understanding the pattern isn't enough. You need to know how to protect yourself, how to recognize these thoughts in action before they reach their conclusion. And the truth is, you can't read minds. You can't know what someone is thinking. But you can read behavior, because thoughts lead to actions, even small ones, even subtle ones. And if you know what to look for, you can see the pattern forming. First, trust your discomfort. That feeling in your stomach when something seems off, even if you can't articulate why, that's your unconscious mind recognizing patterns your conscious mind hasn't processed yet. Don't talk yourself out of that feeling. Don't rationalize it away because someone seems nice or because you don't want to be rude or because you think you're overreacting. Your discomfort is data. Respect it. Second, watch for boundary testing. When someone pushes against a boundary you've set, even in a small way, and you enforce it, how do they react? Do they respect it? Or do they push back, argue, make you feel guilty for having the boundary in the first place? That reaction tells you everything. Someone with good intentions respects boundaries, even if they're disappointed. Someone with predatory intentions sees boundaries as obstacles to overcome. Third, notice isolation attempts. If someone in your life is subtly or overtly trying to separate you from other people, from other perspectives, from other sources of support, ask yourself why. What do they gain from having you alone, dependent, cut off from outside influence? And don't accept easy answers like, I just want to spend time with you, or, they don't understand our connection. Healthy relationships expand your world. Predatory relationships contract it. Fourth, pay attention to how you feel about yourself when you're with them. Do you feel more confident, more capable, more valued? Or do you feel smaller, more anxious, more inadequate? Predators need you to doubt yourself because self-doubt is the crack they use to get inside your mind. If someone consistently makes you feel less than, that's not about your inadequacy. That's about their strategy. Fifth, document reality. Write down what actually happened, what was actually said, when it happened. Because one of the most effective tools predators use is rewriting history, making you doubt your memory, your perception, your sanity. Having a record, a timeline, a documented account of events grounds you in reality when someone tries to distort it. Sixth, maintain connections. Even when it's hard, even when you're being pressured to cut people off. Keep at least one relationship outside the sphere of influence of anyone who might be manipulating you. One person who knows you, who can reflect back to you when your behavior or thinking starts to change in concerning ways. That outside perspective is your psychological immune system. And finally, understand this. Predators rely on your goodness, on your desire to be kind, to give second chances, to see the best in people, to avoid conflict. They use your strengths against you. So protecting yourself doesn't mean becoming cruel or suspicious of everyone. It means being discerning. It means recognizing that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your trust, your time, your emotional energy. It means understanding that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from someone who's slowly destroying you, even if they're crying, even if they're promising to change, even if everyone else thinks you're overreacting. Because here's what I've learned after 15 years of studying the darkest aspects of human psychology. The scariest monsters aren't the ones in horror movies. They're the ones who look normal, who seem charming, who know exactly what to say to make you doubt yourself, who've practiced these 31 thoughts so many times they can move through them without conscious effort, like a pianist playing a familiar piece. And the only defense against that level of practiced manipulation is awareness, knowledge, the ability to recognize the pattern before it reaches its conclusion. You will encounter people in your life who move through these thoughts, who see you as a target, a tool, an obstacle, anything but a full human being deserving of respect and autonomy. That's not paranoia. That's statistical reality. But now you know. Now you can see. Now you understand that manipulation isn't magic. It's not some mysterious power that certain people have. It's a sequence, a pattern. 31 thoughts that build on each other, each one making the next one possible. And patterns can be interrupted. Sequences can be broken. But only if you recognize them. So the next time someone makes you feel uncomfortable and you can't quite explain why, remember this. The next time someone tests a boundary and gets angry when you enforce it, remember this. The next time you find yourself isolated, doubting your own memory, feeling like you're walking on eggshells, remember this. Remember the 31 thoughts. Remember that somewhere in their mind, a pattern is unfolding. And you have the power to step out of that pattern before it reaches its conclusion. You have the power to say no, to leave, to protect yourself, even when it's hard, even when they're telling you you're wrong, even when everyone else thinks you should give them another chance. Because in the end, the most dangerous thought isn't one of the 31 thoughts the predator has. It's the thought the victim has. The thought that says, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm the problem. That thought, that doubt, that's what keeps people trapped in situations that are slowly destroying them. So the final lesson, the one that matters most, is this. Trust yourself. Trust your perception. Trust your memory. Trust your discomfort. Trust that if something feels wrong, it probably is wrong, even if you can't prove it, even if you can't articulate it, even if the person doing it seems so convincing when they tell you you're imagining things. Your mind is yours. Your reality is yours. Your boundaries are yours. And no one, no matter how charming, how persistent, how convincing, has the right to take those things from you. They'll try. They'll move through their 31 thoughts, building toward the moment when they believe they have permission to harm you. But you don't have to give them that moment. You don't have to be the target they've selected. You can walk away. You can protect yourself. You can recognize the pattern and refuse to play your assigned role in it. And that recognition, that refusal, that's not just self-protection. It's breaking a cycle that's been repeating for as long as humans have existed. One predator at a time. One target at a time. One sequence of 31 thoughts that leads to harm. But when you recognize it, when you step out of the pattern, you're not just saving yourself. You're proving that awareness is stronger than manipulation. That knowledge is stronger than psychological tactics. That the human mind, when it understands how it's being targeted, has an extraordinary capacity to defend itself. So now you know the 31 thoughts. You know the pattern. You know what moves in the shadows before harm occurs. And that knowledge changes everything. Because predators rely on invisibility. They need you not to see, not to understand, not to recognize what's happening until it's too late. But you see now. You understand now. And once you understand, you can never fully unsee it. That pattern will be visible to you for the rest of your life. In relationships, in workplaces, in casual interactions, you'll notice the boundary tests, the isolation attempts, the justifications, the normalization, and noticing them gives you the choice, the power, the ability to protect yourself before the pattern reaches its conclusion. Remember this the next time you feel that discomfort, that warning signal your unconscious mind is sending. Remember that someone, somewhere, might be thinking these thoughts about you. 31 precise, calculated thoughts that they believe give them permission to harm you. And remember that you never have to grant that permission. Not with your compliance. Not with your silence. Not with your doubt. You can break the pattern. You can walk away. You can protect the sovereign territory of your own mind against anyone who thinks they have the right to invade it. That's not paranoia. That's wisdom. That's survival. That's understanding that the scariest thing in the world isn't the monster in the dark. It's the 31 thoughts that turn an ordinary person into one.